Ymir Fritz. Before the walls, before the 9 titans, before any of it, there was one girl. Ymir Fritz was nobody. A slave, taken by a king who saw her as property and nothing more. One day, while being hunted like an animal, she fell into a dark underground pool. Something was waiting for her in that darkness, a creature that fused with her, twisted into her bones, and gave her a power no human had ever held. She became the first titan, and the king put her to work. She built his empire. She destroyed his enemies. She bore his children, 3 daughters named Maria, Rose, and Sheena. For 13 years she bled for him, and then she died saving his life from an assassination he didn't even deserve. He didn't mourn her. He stood over her body and gave an order. He told their daughters to eat her, so that her power would live on. And because they loved their mother, or maybe because they feared their father, they obeyed. 3 daughters, kneeling over their mother's body. That single act of horror split her power into 9 pieces and cursed every titan shifter that came after her. She gave everything, and she never once got to choose any of it. Petra Ral. Petra Ral had 58 confirmed titan kills before she turned 20-something. She was Levi's hand-picked soldier. The kind of fighter who made the job look effortless, precise, calm, lethal. But the people who knew her didn't talk about her kill count. They talked about how she made Aaron feel like he belonged somewhere when he first joined the squad. How she'd argue with Oluo on principle just to keep him humble. She was warm in a world that punished warmth. When the female titan broke free during the forest ambush, it didn't go the way they planned. The squad thought they had her contained. They didn't. She regenerated, fast, violent, and went through them one by one. Petra watched her comrades die. Her body froze. The instincts that had kept her alive through dozens of battles stopped working, because nothing in her training had prepared her to watch her entire squad fall in under a minute. The titan's leg connected before she could move. She hit the tree. She slid to the ground. She didn't get up. Levi found her later during the retreat. He slowed his horse for just a moment, looked at her, and kept riding. That was his grief. Quiet, contained, the kind that doesn't leave. Bertholdt Hoover. Bertholdt Hoover spent years living inside a lie. He trained alongside the people he'd been sent to destroy, slept in the same barracks, ate the same food, laughed at the same things, and somewhere along the way, the mission and the guilt started to blur. He was never the loudest one in the room. That was Reiner. He was the quiet one, always standing slightly behind, always following someone else's lead. But inside the colossal titan, he was anything but quiet. His death didn't come in battle. It came after. Armin Arlert had been burned alive, clinging to Bertholdt's titan, skin peeling, refusing to let go, just to give Aaron time to pull him out of the nape. When it was over, Bertholdt was human again. Small, exposed, with no titan between him and the people he'd spent years deceiving. They captured him, and then they made a decision. Armin, who had nearly died, would receive the colossal titan's power, which meant Bertholdt had to be fed to a titan. When he realized what was happening, when he understood, he broke. He screamed for Reiner. He screamed for Annie. He begged anyone in earshot to help him, to come for him, to do something. No one came. Armin's titan leaned down. Bertholdt's voice filled the air, high and desperate and terrified, and then the air went quiet. Ian Dietrich. Most people don't remember Ian Dietrich's name, that's the point. He wasn't a Survey Corps legend. He was a garrison officer. One of the men assigned to protect Aaron during the operation, to seal the breach in trust. A strict, clear-headed leader who believed in the mission even when his own comrades had given up on it. When Aaron lost control of his titan form mid-operation and went unconscious, Rico and Matabi wanted to pull back. The mission was over, they said. There was nothing left to protect. Ian looked at the unconscious boy who was humanity's only chance of reclaiming the wall. Then he looked at his soldiers. He said no. He ordered them to hold the line. Every titan that closed in, they fought. Every building that ran out of reach for their ODM gear, they improvised. Ian was everywhere at once, shouting orders, redirecting, refusing to let the mission collapse. When one of his soldiers was grabbed by a titan, Ian ran in and yanked him free. He didn't have time to get clear himself. A titan grabbed him, bit down. Trost was reclaimed that day. The gate was sealed. Most people who watched that victory had no idea what it cost, or who paid for it. Marlow Freudenberg. Marlow Freudenberg joined the military police because he believed in doing things right. He was going to reform the system from the inside, root out the corruption, make the whole institution mean something again. It took him about 6 months to realize that was never going to happen. So he transferred to the Scouts. He died in a suicide charge against the Beast Titan, part of Erwin's last desperate gamble to buy Levi enough time to attack. Marlow and the other recruits rode straight at something that was throwing boulders the size of houses. They weren't expected to survive. That was the plan. He rode anyway. He watched soldiers disappear in front of him. There 1 second, gone the next, like the Beast Titan was swatting flies. He was afraid. There's no version of this where he wasn't afraid, but he kept going because the people ahead of him kept going, and because he wanted his death to mean something. And then, somewhere in the middle of all of it, his mind went to Hitch, his old partner from the MPs. He wondered what she was doing right now. Probably still in bed, he thought. Probably asleep, with no idea that any of this was happening. He almost smiled. A boulder took half his head before he could finish the thought. Hannes carried a debt he could never repay. Years before any of this, when the smiling Titan first breached Shiganshina, he had been right there. He had seen it tear Aaron's mother apart. He'd had his blades drawn, and then he ran. He grabbed the children, and he ran, and he told himself it was the right call, because what else could he tell himself? He told Aaron the truth eventually. Said he wasn't brave enough to fight it. Said he was sorry. When the smiling Titan appeared again on the battlefield, Aaron was a mess, out of gas, out of energy, unable to shift. He was screaming at the Titan with nothing left to fight it with. And Hannes stepped in front of him. "Aaron," he said, "watch. I'll take revenge for your mother." He sliced its heel. He brought it to the ground. For a few seconds it looked like it might actually work. The Titan grabbed him mid-celebration. Aaron's gear was empty. He had nothing. No blades, no shifting ability, no way to reach him. He just watched. The man who had carried that debt for years. The man who had finally worked up the courage to face what he'd run from. Gone. Same Titan. Same teeth. Aaron laughed. Not a happy laugh. Not a relieved one. The kind that comes when something inside you just gives out completely. He collapsed laughing and crying at the same time. And none of his teammates knew what to do with that. Erwin Smith. Erwin Smith led his last charge with one arm. He'd lost the other one in a previous battle and hadn't slowed down once since. That was Erwin. The kind of man who recalculated the mission around the obstacle and kept moving. He'd spent his entire career sending soldiers to their deaths for the dream of learning the truth about the world beyond the walls. He'd never stopped believing it was worth it. But before the charge, he'd told Levi something that didn't sound like him. He said he was tired. That the dream had started to feel more like a weight than a reason. Levi filed that away and said nothing. The Battle of Shiganshina broke the Survey Corps open. The Beast Titan had them pinned, hurling boulders that swallowed soldiers and horses whole. There was no winning move. Erwin stood in front of the recruits, who were barely old enough to be there, and told them the truth. They were probably going to die in the next few minutes. But if they rode, if they gave Levi the opening he needed, their deaths would be the reason humanity survived. The screaming stopped, then the crying. Then, they rode. Erwin rode at the front, shouting, pushing forward, even as the boulders tore through the ranks around him. One of them caught him, ripped through his side, threw him from his horse. He clung to life long enough to be found by Flock, who carried him back to the base, more dead than alive. There was one dose of Titan serum. It could save Erwin or save Armin, not both. Levi stood there for a long time. He thought about every soldier Erwin had ever sent forward, knowing they wouldn't come back. He thought about what Erwin had said, about being tired. He gave the serum to Armin. Erwin never made it to the basement. Never got the answer he'd spent his whole life chasing. But for the first time in years, there was nothing left for him to carry. He went quietly. That had to be enough. Ramzi and Halil. They weren't soldiers, they weren't Titan shifters. They were kids, beggars, living in Marley with no stake in any war they hadn't asked to be part of. When Aaron was moving through Marley before the attack, he found Ramzi being beaten by a group of men for stealing food. He stepped in, pulled them off the boy, held Ramzi while he cried. And the whole time, Aaron knew. He knew exactly what was going to happen to this boy in a matter of days. He'd already set the rumbling in motion, he'd already decided. He held Ramzi anyway, and when the boy looked up at him confused, why is this stranger crying? Why is he saying sorry? Aaron didn't have an answer that would mean anything. When the wall titans came through, Ramzi and his brother Halil ran. Everyone ran. But the colossal titans move the way weather moves. You can't outrun it. You can only hope it passes you by. It didn't pass them by. A titan's foot came down on a building nearby. The wall exploded outward. A piece of debris pinned Ramzi to the ground, flat against the stone, unable to move, unable to look away from what was in front of him. Halil's body, already still. Ramzi screamed until a titan's foot came down and he stopped.